Hey everyone, this is Levels of Life with your host, Brandon Giles. Now, I'm super excited for you guys to hear today's episode. I'm fortunate enough to sit down with Jim Penman. And for those that do not know him, he's a renowned Australian businessman who founded the Jim's Group. Now, he started with Jim's Mowing, which his logo is an Australian icon that everyone recognises. And to give you an idea of his success, he has grown that business to have nearly 4,000 franchisees internationally and is one of the largest franchises in Australia with an annual turnover in excess of $500 million. What I love about Jim is that regardless of his success, his humbleness and honesty is so unique. He's quite the character and he provides us with a vivid and honest portrait of his life, which gives you key takeaways and things that you can adopt in your own life to help you improve. His passion and striving to always improve himself it's inspiring, and it epitomizes my podcast message that it's a classic story of it doesn't matter where you're at, what you think your strengths are, what you think your weaknesses are, you can improve and you can be the best version of yourself and you can achieve whatever you put your mind to, and this story reflects that. So I hope you enjoy it today, and if you really did get something out of it, please leave a review and share it around. It would mean a lot to me. So let's get started. Thank you for coming on today, Jim, to the Levels of Life podcast. And purpose for today is I'd love to give people an insight into your incredible story and give them like a perspective of how much benefit you've actually provided to so many people and families through your business. And I'm hoping today our chat can inspire some people to get through the challenges that we're obviously all facing right now and how we can rebound out and strive for excellence in anything we want to do. So the first question that I have and what a lot of people will have is we have a preconceived idea of what background or characteristics we need in order to become a successful businessman. And now tell me, your story is, how do you originally go from studying history to becoming an academic to launching a Jim's Mowing business from $24?
Well, you'd like to think there was some sort of master plan, but it's basically what happened is I never had any concept in my mind of becoming wealthy or going into business. And it never crossed my thought any time in my life. Yeah. For my first 3 decades. I wanted to understand civilizations. I want to understand why civilizations rise and fall, why the Roman Empire fell, why the Greeks were so creative and lost it. That was my obsession from the age of about 14. I used to read a lot of history and also biology and stuff too, a lot of different things. Just I had all these tomes about the decline of the late Roman Empire, this kind of stuff, and I was always reading these things and just wondering. So I went to university I thought, well, they've got some answers. There must be some way of starting there. And I started off studying sociology and quickly realized that was the most absolute pile of piffle. I mean, it was absolutely nonsense. It was ideology dressed up in rhetoric and just, it was terrible. So I switched to history. And I thought, okay, history, at least that's something fairly concrete. And I started reading history. And I started getting some very strange ideas about what was going on in different human societies and why they were happening. And so I went into a PhD after that because I got to my honours year with difficulty, I might say, because I used to go to my lecturers and by my 3rd year and say, look, I don't want to study the courses. I'll just write essays and I'll study the area and I'll submit them to you. So I don't take any lectures or tutors or anything. So La Trobe was a pretty easygoing university, so they let me do that. And then I started my PhD and always with the aim I was going to understand this and build an academic career. That was my whole purpose in life. There was just nothing else that really, really mattered to me. But as I kept going, my ideas started getting more and more extreme because I started off looking at history and I was always interested in the patterns of history. Why different civilizations, and not just what happens in modern Europe, but why East Asia is different, pre-Columbian America, primitive hunter-gatherer society, a whole range of. So I started looking at cross-cultural anthropology. And then I started to see certain kind of patterns, and I was particularly interested in demographics. So I started looking at biology, animal behavior, about zoology and things to do with hormones and so forth, because I was just trying to understand these patterns. So what happened is by about the year 1982, I had this wildly unorthodox thinking that just turned all of human history, all of thought about humans on its head. completely. It talked about the fact that civilization is basically, it's to do with an epigenetic, not that we use the term in those days, but it's to do with a change in character driven by biological forces. And it was driven by religions and so forth. So it was covering psychology, history, cross-cultural anthropology, the lot.
Yeah.
And it was wildly unorthodox. And what became obvious at that time is that nobody is going to employ a historian who has ideas like this.
Yeah.
I was completely off the planet. There was no possible way. To be a historian, you have to be the greatest expert in the middle period of the Wars of the Roses, for example, and become an expert. And I wasn't even interested in one society. I wanted to study everything and not just history.
Yeah.
So what do when you've spent 10 years of your life getting yourself a PhD in history and you're completely unemployable? Well, fortunately, when I was doing this, because I wanted to study basically full-time, holidays and everything from way back, I found that gardening, mowing lawns was a good way to make a living, because the hourly rate was pretty good, much better than getting a job. Plus it was outside and exercise and everything else. So I used to do that. So I was a lawn mowing contractor part-time, and that was quite successful. As a student, I actually managed to buy my first house, a small house in Eltham. So when it comes to 1982, I was realised just finally that my academic career was completely going nowhere. But I was also, unfortunately, because of various stupid things, that I was deeply in debt, and I owed about $35,000. So I was in a really, really desperate situation. To make life really interesting, I just got married, and my wife was a student, so I was supporting her. So you can imagine the kind of situation I was in. And I got $24. I had an old mower and brush cutter and an old trailer, really, really decrepit stuff. I got $24. $4 was for Letraset, which in those days you could get in the stationery store. You could put letters on a bit of paper. And then I got $20 worth of instant printing done, and I got some leaflets. And that was the start of my career. And I started putting leaflets in letterboxes. And just to make things really interesting, that was in late November, December 1982. Within a couple of weeks after I started, they've had the worst drought in Melbourne history, and every lawn in Melbourne died. So I was starting a mowing business, deeply in debt with no capital. And to make life even more interesting, my mowers and brush cutter completely blew up after my first 2 or 3 weeks. So that's my start. Right?
That's your start, and you already had a challenge straight off the bat. That's amazing. I've done a bit of research into you, and I read that pretty early that you had a good self-awareness. It made you recognise that you're actually pretty not good at anything. Like, you didn't have great skills. And how early on in your business did that push you to start outsourcing tasks and to start scaling your company?
Well, in some ways it was a benefit. I mean, I still have pretty poor social skills. My wife says I'm got a mild case of Asperger's because I'm so ignorant of social clues. I say things all the time that upsets people. I don't even recognise I've done it. I just don't. Most people have a filter where they sort of think, if I say this, people are going to react. I don't have that. I just blurt it out. And if you see my public performances, you'll probably see some evidence of that.
There's a lot of passion, yeah.
A lot of passion, not a lot of sense sometimes. But the point of it is, look, I had some terrible weaknesses like that. I'm also not very good at focusing on things and, the detail of management and stuff like that. But I do have some very strong passions. One of them is that I am very, very creative. I'm very unorthodox in my thinking, even today. I mean, I just naturally look at what's going on and I think of different ways of doing it. I'm really, really, really flexible in my thinking. And I certainly was. And that was represented by my research, of course. That was my thinking. I go into something and get something so wildly unorthodox. And by the way, it might be wild, but we've done some recent research which has backed up some of my ideas, and we've got some potential treatments and things going, treatments for mental health. It's wildly unorthodox, but not necessarily wrong.
Yes.
But so I had this creative surge, but I also have something else too, which is a passion for service. And it's not a rational thing. It's not an economic thing. I just hate seeing people let down. So when I was a mowing contractor, I wasn't even particularly knowledgeable about gardens, but I was really, really good at giving people what they wanted. I was really good at doing the launch. I was one of the first contractors to have a brush cutter, for example, which wasn't even known when I started off. And I got one of the first ones in Australia because I could do the edges better. And every blade of grass had to be done, and I had to turn up on time and just, I take the grass from the weeds and the cracks from the driveways and blow everything off and just absolutely immaculate job, whatever I did. If I dug over a garden bed, it had to be completely clean, all the grass gone, and I was very good at that, very efficient at doing those kind of things, great service. So when I started this, that's my idea. And because I was always flexible in my thinking, and because I had this passion for service, I kept on getting more leads and more work. It actually started, what got me onto the path was when I was, when I started, I worked 10 years for a PhD. I didn't actually get my PhD. I failed it because it was knocked back. They sent it out to 3 different people and they just couldn't know what to make of it. And so eventually, after a lot of toing for it, they said, no, this isn't good enough. This is too wild. But then my supervisor got back to me after I'd been out mowing a couple of years, and she said, well, would you like to resubmit it? Because, if you change the methodology, explain what you're doing it better, then maybe people will, you can get this PhD. And I thought, well, I spent 10 years going for this thing. I know I've got no career there, but I might as well do it. So what I did, I had some lawn mowing customers, regular customers I was looking after. And I thought, well, if I'm going to, I got over my immediately bad situation by this time. But I thought if I'm going to have time to actually complete my PhD, what I've got to do is to stop mowing so many lawns. So what I decided to do is to sell my customers a lawn mowing ground, which I've sort of done a little bit in the past, but I've done this. So I put an ad in the Age, and I had this person come in, they were interested in buying it, and they talked to me, went further, and all this time was happening. It took a few weeks to go through. I kept on picking up more and more customers. But so by the time that I had, got the round to go through to be sold, I was still working flat out. I had all these customers. So I thought, okay, I'll do it again. So I did the same thing, advertised, and the same thing happened. Person took a while to get through it. And by the time that one finished, I was still flat out. And so the third time I did, I actually managed to tell my business, but I'd sold 3 lawn mowing rounds at that time. And this is just the independent people who want to go into business for themselves.
Sorry, when you say you were selling your rounds, for people that understand, you were selling a product and you were getting someone to do it for you.
No, actually what I was doing was selling it as a business.
Okay.
In other words, I had the goodwill. Let's just say I have 60 clients which are bringing me an income of $1,500 per week, as an example. Okay. Mm-hmm. I go to somebody and say, I'll introduce my clients to you. You do them. You start off with that income and I'll take the money.
Okay.
So I'm selling the business rights, not the equipment, the business rights. Yes. Not subbies. Okay.
Okay.
But anyway, so when I did this and I finished and I actually did get my PhD eventually as a result of this rewrite. But I looked at my business and I thought, well, I'm actually making a lot more money by building up and selling lawn mowing grounds than I am by mowing lawns myself. So I decided to make this into a business. And here another situation arises too. I mentioned before about being very, very poor with social skills. And I really was. I'm just terrible at it. And what that meant too, the problem with that was that I was in a business that really depended on building up and selling lawnmower rounds, which involved a lot of selling. And I was starting to employ subcontractors to expand this thing. So I could employ subbies to look after the runs briefly, the customers briefly, and until I could find a buyer for them. But I ran into this problem that I found that when I was trying to sell businesses on a regular basis, my extreme lack of social skills was a major problem.
Okay.
So what I would do, I looked at every possible way to try and sell lawn mowing rounds. I asked advice from everybody I know, and look, at one stage I actually had a guy who was a professional salesman who was selling my businesses for me while I was in the same room. That was how little confidence I had in myself. I actually tried selling encyclopedias door to door and this kind of stuff, and I was terrible at it. So terrible at sales, no social skills. And you've got a business that completely depends on being able to sell.
Yes.
So what do you do? And I just didn't know. I just was stuck. This was really holding my business back. And I had an experience, which was, I've always felt was the one key turning point in my whole business career, much more than starting up at 24. It was this particular experience. I went to see somebody in my church who was in the advertising business. And he was very successful, far more than I was. I mean, I'm sure he was a millionaire. He had this very successful business with a lot of high-powered clients, all kinds of things. And I went to see this guy basically to get some advice on finding clients. And I thought I could use an agent, to help, an advertising agent, to help me with that. This guy, Peter's name, he invited me into his office, and for half an hour, he just talked to me about advertising, how to advertise, where to advertise, what sort of message to use, what sort of media to use, those kinds of things. All his experience that he'd had over, decades of experience in business. And at the end of it, he said to me, Jim, you don't need an advertising agent. You should go out and do this. Now, I walked out of his office, and I knew that if I ever needed an advertising agent, I would go straight back to him. Yeah. And I was walking back to the car, which was parked some street somewhere, and I was thinking about this, because remember, this thing in my mind, how do you sell? How do you sell? How do you sell? I'm hopeless at selling. I can't sell. I was thinking about this. What on earth has this guy done? He's completely sold me on his business, and yet he hasn't told me anything about his business. And it's true, years later after the franchise, I needed some TV advertising. I went straight back to him because I've been completely sold. So I was thinking, what's he done? How has he done this? How has he managed to sell me so thoroughly by apparently not selling me at all? And as I walked back to the car, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, the only thing that Peter did in this entire conversation, the only concern he had was my welfare and the welfare of my business. And by doing that, he completely sold me on his business. And I can remember vividly this moment when I was reaching out to my old car, which was at Kingswood, and I was in Kingswood in those days, very decrepit, had the back seat ripped out, rubbish, and you wouldn't believe how dented and filthy it was. It was a real wreck. And I never used to lock it too, because nobody would steal this thing. I can remember reaching out to the door handle and thinking, I wonder if this could possibly work for my business. So I thought, give it a try. Next time somebody approached me from the age of asking about a business, I said, instead of telling them about my business, I asked him a question. I said, tell me, do you know what the cut of a lawn mowing round means? Now, the cut is each job done once. So if you've got 100 clients worth $60 each, it's a $6,000 cut. And from that, you can figure out the income, how often they're done and so forth, extras, everything else. So that's how lawn mowing grounds were always advertised in. But I knew from experience, most new people coming in didn't know what that meant. So I started to explain to him what it meant and how you value a business. And then I just started talking about the business and how it should work and what the principles were and where you advertise them, what sort of pricing you can charge and what sort of extra, all this kind of stuff. And as he came to see me, I said the same thing. I just talked about the business and how to be successful and what I'd done. And at the end of it, all I did was I gave him a list of customers, this is the customers in your area. Okay. A little bit later, somebody came to me. And the point of it is, I'm not selling, am I? There's no need for social skills because I'm not actually trying to sell anybody anything. I'm just giving them information about how to run a successful business, which is easy because I was good at it. I've made good money out of mowing lawns. Short while later, somebody actually rang me and they said to me, Jim, who'd been to see me actually, and he said, Jim, I want your advice. I've been offered a business in my area and I want you to advise me which is a better business, that one or yours. You think about it. I'm doing this to try and sell lawn mowing rounds, and he wants me to advise him on whether he should buy my business, which actually indicated that he had some faith that I was actually giving him genuine advice, didn't it?
Yes.
Obviously, he wouldn't have asked me. So I thought, well, I can't lie, I can't sell, I can't dissemble. I just give him the best advice I can. So I asked him, okay, how many customers has he got? What's the cut value? How far apart are they? How long has he had it for? Why is he selling? What's he going to do? I mean, these are all relevant questions, and so you can value a business and you understand what it's actually worth. And at the end of it, I said, that's a better business. Go and buy that one. And I got asked the same question 3 times in succession, quite shortly after that. 3 times, people asked me for my advice, and each time I said to buy the other business. In the third case, I actually said it's a better business for you, but he's charging too much. Offer him this price. He's charging $1,000 too much. So I gave away 3 sales You know what happened? They all came back and bought from me, every single one of them, not because I had the best deal, but because I showed that I had their interests at heart. And at that stage, when I learnt that one very simple lesson, we call that selling by not selling it, Jim's the title of one of my books, this pathetic, dreadful salesperson suddenly became able to sell very, very well. And my whole pattern of behavior and attitude was, I'm going to do everything I can to make this person successful. So when they came to see me, I would actually give them a brochure, which was not anything great, but just a few pages stapled together, just give it to them and say, here you are. This is all everything I know about the lawnmower business. And just ask me for help anytime you want to, even if you buy the other business. I'm happy to help you. And then when they bought from me, I would replace customers and without question if they dropped out and replace those that dropped out. And they ring me up in advice. I'd always give it to them. And I even used to throw free lunches and just come along and meet with other contractors and learn from them and so forth. So I just established relationships with them. And every time somebody bought a business from me, I'd put their name in black text with their phone number on a bit of white cord and stuck it behind me in the office wall. And so if anybody was interested in buying a business and they wanted to know anything about me, I mean, I just did this thing, this is our business and here's the thing. And I said, look, if you want anything about me, bring up some of those guys. And they bring them up and they say, Jim's great. Jim does everything he says he will and more. He's always ready to help. He gives advice. I actually sold the business, but Jim helped me to sell it, helped me to get the best price and stuff, even those who'd left. So I had this whole range full of people
of feedback to look on and to support what you're doing. It's evident to see. The next question was, what do you think your key to success in the business was? But it's evident to see that your sheer focus on trying to provide value and help people has been infectious. And
well, if you think about it, it's the same principle. Why I was successful as a lawnmowing contractor, not because I was particularly knowledgeable about plants and stuff, but because I was obsessed with making my customers really, really happy. Why was I successful at selling lawnmowing? The same reason. It was the same thing. They're my customers, so I'm going to make them really, really happy. Not even if they don't become my customers, I'm going to do everything possible to help them to succeed. So this is get to a certain stage, and we're talking now getting into towards the late 80s, middle to late 80s, and things were going okay. I'd paid off my debt. I actually managed to buy a house, which was getting ahead, and everything was swimming along. I had this little business. Now, I didn't think this was anything long-term. I just thought this is the thing I'll get into until something better comes along. Because, by the way, when I said in the past I never had any desire to be wealthy, I now did. And the reason was because I wanted to continue my research. Because all the stuff I did in my PhD suggested that you could actually do incredible things to change human character for the better. And cure a lot of illnesses and ailments and so forth, psychological problems, using science, so I had to refund this research institute. So I did want to become wealthy, but it didn't seem this little lawnmower business was ever going to achieve me that. So I was just looking around. I tried a few things like computer shop and mower shop and all kinds of stuff. I just tried different things, but this little mowing business went along on the side. So everything was okay until disaster strikes. A company called VIP, which was a franchise lawn mowing business. Now, I'd heard about these guys in Adelaide, and I thought, oh, well, they're Adelaide. Doesn't affect us. And they came to Melbourne. And really, I looked at it, and I was panicked. I mean, I thought these guys are going to crush me like a slug. I mean, for heaven's sake, they were interstate. They had 250 franchisees. I had about, 8 or 10 subbies. They had uniforms, nothing. I had no uniforms, no signage and stuff. They had this office. They had brochures. They had contracts. They had all this stuff. And really, I just basically, what I did is I rang up the state manager, a guy called David Mitchell at that time, and I said to him, David, I'm Jim from Jim's Mowing. He said, yeah, I know who you are, because it was called Jim's Mowing in those days, even if it was just me. And I said, look, I really don't want to compete with you guys. You're obviously too successful for me. So what if I just take all my customers and sell to you at a discount rate, and I'll help to boot up VIP in Victoria? And so he said, so I joined forces with him in a small way. And he said, no, thanks, not interested in that. So I thought, well, I might try to see if there's any possible way that I can compete with these guys. Now, bear in mind, I had very little money. I had no sign, no logo, no nothing. Actually, the only thing I used to put my photo on the leaflets because I found they worked better. Goodness knows why, but wasn't quite as ugly as I am in those days. Had a beard too. Anyway, so I decided to find out what they were doing. So I decided to do a bit of espionage. In that year, 1988, they had a show at the old Melbourne Exhibition buildings, which is Exhibition Street. And I went in there, and they used to get a little badge with your name and stuff on it. So I took that off, put it in my pocket, walked up to the stand. Now, bear in mind, one of my peculiarities, based on my incredibly poor social skills, is that I can't tell lies. I'm so hopeless, I wouldn't even attempt it. So I went up to the guy at the stand and said, I am very interested in VIP. Can you tell me about it? Fortunately, he didn't ask why I was interested because I really would have told him. I was that bad at dissembling. But he did actually explain to me what it was about, and he gave me this brochure, which was really interesting, and I took it apart afterwards. I didn't even know what a heat seal binder was, and everything that was written, I got hold of that. And then the statement, Dave Mitchell came in, he said, "That's Jim Penman, don't tell him anything else." And he chucked me off the stand. And I walked away. And when I walked in, I was very fearful. But as I came out, I was actually pretty positive because I recognised there were some good things about VIP. One of the problems when you're mowing lawns is if you break a leg, say you're off for 6 weeks, you come back, your customers are gone. So the good thing about this was that you could actually have someone look, your fellow franchisees will look after them, which we do ourselves these days all the time. So it's that advantage. And other things too, like, discounted insurance and joint advertising. And there was benefits I could see. But I looked at what they did and I thought, I tell you what, I reckon I could do a system. I could develop a system which will be better for the franchisee. That was the core idea. I didn't want to compete with them on marketing or anything else. I just thought if I can make franchisees happy, really happy, then I won't be crushed by these guys, even though they had more resources and everything else.
Was that your turning point or mindset shift that you thought I can really start scaling this?
Well, I wanted to be franchised just to survive because I knew that if I tried to go up with no logos and stuff like that, I was just trying to survive. Now, as to scaling, I'll give you an example down the track about what I thought at the beginning, and it's not what you might think. What I did is that I went to see some lawyers to get a contract on. I actually got the VIP contract, but I hated it. It was too restrictive. It just basically gave the franchisor all the power. Now, I wouldn't want to sell that because I wouldn't believe in it. I wanted something that would be the franchisee would want. So I went to see some lawyers, and that was really difficult. They just couldn't comprehend what I was after. They kept on arguing with me. I had to find 2 lawyers. It took me 9 months to get a contract I was happy with. And they kept on saying to me, "You're being too nice, you're being too nice." And I said, "No, I want everything possible. I want this to be the best system in the world." Because that's the only way I'm going to compete with this VIP crowd. And eventually they did what I wanted vaguely. But they said to me, "Jim, this is hopeless. You want to change these and give yourself more." They said more flexibility. What they meant is more power.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I won't." I gave my franchise all kinds of rights. I was going to, we couldn't take jobs off without their consent, which VIP could. Automatic renewal after 10 years. You cannot be terminated as long as you're compliant. You must be renewed. There's a whole stack of things. And then I went to the people I wanted to be my first franchisees, my subbies, and people who bought lawnmower runs off me in the past. I wanted to transfer across. They were kind of my trainers. And I put it to them. I had a meeting in a flat next to our house where we used to have our office. And I said to them, "Here's the contract. What do you think? How could you improve it?" And they came up with these changes. And I said, "Okay, I hadn't thought of that, but yes, we'll put that." So we put all these protections in place. We had the best contract we come up with that was really, really good for franchisees. And then I launched, and that was in mid-1989. And somebody asked me, you asked about scaling up. Somebody asked me how many franchisees I might have one day. And bearing in mind, I had, as I said, about 10 subbies at that time. That was as far as I got. I said, well, one day, if this really works out well, I might have as many as 100 franchisees one day, years and years from now. Okay, that was a statement I actually made, which tells you how little my ambition was.
Yeah.
And so I launched this thing, and I'm running it from a flat next to my house. They had this fancy office. I'm completely unknown. I'm a lousy salesperson. It was so primitive, you wouldn't believe it. But I had one really, really powerful weapon. Now, remember I told you about my board with the bit of white card? Well,
yes.
You couldn't do that now because it was... So what I used to do was to put all my franchisees, a list of them with their names and their phone numbers on a list, and I'd give it to every person who came talk to me. And I was up there too, so they go to see a VIP, they come to see me. So how do you sell? As I used to say, why would you buy a? I shortly changed house and I had the office in my basement. So they'd say, why would you buy a business from a guy who runs it from his basement when we're an interstate business with all this stuff, that's going on? But anyway, so I put this list out, and people come to me and they say, well, why should I buy from you rather than VIP? Because obviously they're so much more successful and bigger than you are. And I said, well, look, there's some differences. And I explained a little bit. I didn't knock them down. I do have a lot of respect. I did have a lot of respect. I still do for VIP of what they'd achieved. I didn't rubbish them. I said there's some differences. But what you really need to do is to go out and do some research. Here's a list of all my franchisees, and I want you to ring every single one, as many as you want. Yeah. And then go to VIP and ask for their list. Now, I was being a little bit misleading because I knew they wouldn't give them the list. They couldn't give them the list because the fact of the matter is my guys overwhelmingly were happy and theirs not so much. They give them the area managers, but they couldn't give them the full list. Now, this was years before it was in the franchising code of conduct, which is about the only good thing about the franchising code, I might say, was this particular list. So anyway, that's what I did. And I have to say it just stunned me. I had no comprehension about how successful. By the end of the first year, I had like 60. And which was, to my mind, it was vast. Yeah. And I went to the franchise expo myself, and I was sitting there because I was just by myself, just in my green mowing gear and stuff, and people were piled up around the whole booth, the whole weekend, just because it was so novel, so interesting what I was doing. And people started inquiring about interstate. Now, when it first started, actually, they had on the contract, they had Jim's Mowing Victoria, Jim's Mowing Australia. And I said to the lawyers, what do you want to do that for? And he said, well, in case you want to go interstate. And I said, and this is what I actually said to them. I said, don't be ridiculous. This is a lawn mowing business. That was the way I phrased it. No comprehension. If you told me I'd be in Canada and New Zealand one day, I would have said, you are completely loony off the bat. But anyway, people started coming to me and saying they wanted to do this thing interstate. I had a couple of my own franchisees went interstate. They wanted to go interstate themselves. And so we started expanding. It wasn't me that did it. It was people coming to me or people wanting to go themselves. So we started this process of expansion. And it just blew from there. I mean, it just grew. And it's kind of hard to explain. Look, there's so many reasons why I should fail in business. I am not naturally hardworking. I've got terrible social skills. I make dreadful mistakes. I do things impulsively. I don't sit down and count the cost. I've driven myself bust more than once, or nearly, that is. I've done so many stupid things, but I have this passion for service more than anything else. I'm just driven. Having my franchisees successful is just everything to me. Like in this latest lockdown. Now, look, it's cost me a bit of money. Okay, it's cost me $500,000 maybe, but that doesn't worry me at all because obviously I'm pretty well off. But seeing my franchisees being hurting is really, really, really hard to take. It makes me very, very angry, very upset. I have this emotional thing about it. Yeah. And I'm also very emotional about customer service too. I actually read through every complaint that comes into the office.
It was a question, yeah. It was something I was blown away with. And it was a question I had that people need to understand the detail of how passionate you are with how vital the customers are to you. And it's something that can be adapted to anyone's business or just in life. It's like a life lesson that really look after the person you're trying to serve. And you're evident that the reward is there.
Yeah, but then again, the trouble is if you're financially motivated, if you say that you believe in customer service because it'll make you more money, or you believe in looking after a franchise because it'll make you more money, it's the wrong way around. You believe in customer service, you believe in franchisees doing well because that's what's mostly important to you, and money is always secondary. Most of the good decisions I've made in my life, the best decisions, are ones where I went against my own financial self-interest. Like when I told those guys to buy the other business. It was a great decision, but I didn't know it. Or when I started off, one of the principles I had, because I did not want my franchisees to fail, I was determined to knock back anybody that wouldn't pass I used to send everybody out with a couple of my trusted franchisees, and if they didn't like what they did, if they didn't think they had good customer service, I would fail them because I knew that they'd unlikely to succeed. Now, when I did that, I actually thought this was going to make it very hard to grow because I'd be knocking back so many people. And some of the ones I knocked back, might have been successful. I didn't know that. I just thought they weren't. Now, what I didn't realize at the time, that was one of the keys to my success, because it meant that people out there were not only getting good support, but they were also the kind of people who were likely to succeed, because I wouldn't let the others in. So that was the reason why I had so many good references. So, and many, many times in other ways since then, it's always when you look at money first, you make stupid decisions. You've got to care about what you do first. And people do think I'm loony. I mean, they really do. Here's a guy with a business that's turning over the best part of $1 billion a year, and you spend your days going through complaints and looking at them. I even deal with clients. If a client brings back a second time and the complaint's not fixed, I will actually communicate with the client by email and make sure it's fixed.
Yeah.
But what I've actually done with this is, because I'm always focusing on these things, we get better and better and better. A few years ago, we actually started doing surveys of customers, and I follow up those surveys and look at them, and we have ratings and stuff. And by jeepers, franchisees get really, really intense about surveys. It's a very emotional thing with us. People want their 4.9 stars and this kind of thing. It's huge. Yeah. And complaints can lead to, I put things in place. So you get too many complaints, you get warning letters, breach notices, all the stuff. It's really serious stuff. So we put this huge focus on customer service. But the interesting thing that's happened is that in recent years, as we've put more and more of these things in place, and as our service has improved, our actual leads have gone through the roof. They're rising dramatically faster. Last year, we knocked back more than 180,000 leads. And you might think this is because we're actually doing a lot of marketing, but in actual fact, one of the things that's happened in recent years with this change, we've had to give back the money. We charge about $140 per month per franchisee. Quite often we can't spend it. I've got my franchisees in one of my regions that I personally run. I'm going to give them back about $80,000 in the next month or two. Other franchisors give back hundreds of thousands. We can't spend our advertising dollars because there's so much work coming in. They're flat out year round. And this is customer service for you. And it's not because we're cheap. In fact, I say them again and again, don't be cheap. We are not cheap as chips. Charge more. Find out what the opposition is charging at least 10%. I want you guys making at least $60 an hour. I do not want to see anybody making less than that. So I hit them again and again. Fantastic service, but charge well for it. And it works so well.
Yeah.
But only works because of the obsession with service. And with my franchisees too, I never stopped trying to experiment to do things better for them. Yeah. Now, these lawyers said you're going to have to dampen this thing down, and, you're going to have to give yourself more power. You know what? I've done the absolute opposite. We've got systems in place, for example, that we put in place over the years where franchisees can move to a different franchisor if they're not happy with their own. They can just move because we normally have more than one in a city. And if a franchisor is not doing a great job, people start going from their edges. And that puts that person under incredible pressure to either lift their service or get out. Even more radical, our franchisees can vote out their franchisor by a simple majority vote. 3 months warning, vote comes in. If you fail it, 3 months warning. If you fail it again, you are out. You are gone. That's it. If you can't satisfy. So we treat our franchisees like clients. We give our franchisees and our franchisors the right to veto changes to their own manuals. So if we propose a change, or if somebody does, we put it through elected committee first. If they approve it, it goes to referendum. If it's not back, it doesn't go through. And that does happen at times. Yeah, so we give our franchisees more powers.
It's inspiring to hear that, because it feels good helping people that you've done. You've helped so many people, and that focus of making sure everyone's happy. And it's like, I even know when I help someone, it just feels amazing because you're providing someone with a benefit, you're serving someone, and that's how you've molded your whole business and how it's got to over, I think, nearly 4,000 franchisees now. It's gotten so big, and it's because people feel good when they work with you or they deal with you, and that's something we should all be replicating for anything we do. And I know you're big on family and families. You've got 11 kids, which is an achievement in itself. And the question I had is, what
Not
wisdom?
much of an achievement because I got 3 divorces to get this. I'd be a lot more proud if I did it with one woman, even though she might be a bit worn out by now.
But your most recent one is with you got 2 kids, and or what?
No, we got 4 kids. Lee and I got 4 kids, and very happily married for nearly 20 years. So that's actually has worked out well. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
She can put up with me, so she must be wonderful.
Yes. What wisdom or knowledge would you want to pass on to your kids that if they were starting out a business or they wanted to go on this journey, like something you'd know or learned?
One of the things I often say to them is that intelligence is hugely overrated. What matters is the degree of effort you put into it. It's work all the time. It's just trying hard. You just got to focus on what you're doing. Don't focus on money so much. Focus on doing the job incredibly well. Just be the best you possibly can, and lots of things too. I mean, obviously my kids tend to be very good savers and so forth. They don't tend to be overspending. One of the things that I've been very determined about in my family is that, we're obviously in normal terms, we're very rich. We're in the top fraction of 1% of population, obviously in terms of income, but you would not know it from look at the way we live. I drive a 10-year-old car. This is about as good clothes as I've got, and that's only because it's a uniform. Yeah. I wear my clothes till they wear out. We live very, very simple life. We eat a lot of vegetables and so forth. Very simple diet. And if I ever fly, which I hate, I go economy. I just don't spend money. So one of the things I've been most concerned with my kids is to not be spoiled. That they have a normal middle class type of lifestyle and they have to work for what they get, and we're not going to make it easy for them. The one thing I would never do is give my kids a vast amount of wealth. They're all good. They're all great kids. Youngest only 11, but he's brilliant so far. So, but they're all great kids, and they're going to be successful because of character. And character is what counts in life, nothing else. Brains is far less important. It's character.
And that's really inspiring for people to listen in. That we're in an environment right now that you need a degree, you need to be this, to be that, to be successful. And coming from you with what you've achieved, with saying it openly, honestly, that you don't have to be super smart to get to where you want to be, and it's your drive and desire and your hard work. And it's amazing to hear, and it will resonate with a lot of kids.
People focus on the wrong things. They focus on brains, which is inherent. You can't do much about it. The best estimates are only about 4% of success can be attributed to intelligence as such. Things like work ethic and responsibility and ethics are far, far, far more important. And I see it all the time in all kinds of people. The people that are successful, not those who are the smartest, those who work hard and focus on what they do and always ask themselves the question, how can I do this better? And they'll listen to advice. I've got some wonderful people in gyms, like the head of the clean division, Haydar Hussain, and he's a wonderful guy. He's an incredibly successful bloke. He's multi-millionaire in his own right for sure. He's got this beautiful. His house is 1/3 of an acre. Yeah. By the way, when he came to us, he was a cleaner. He was just cleaning. That was what he was when he came to gyms. Bought a franchise. He's a multi-millionaire. He's got this 1/3 of an acre house. He's got this holiday place in Cyprus where his family comes from. He's incredibly, but he's the humblest guy you could imagine. He was always willing to listen, always willing to learn, and he's just a great guy to talk to. We love it. I love Haydar. He's a great guy, and we'll spout ideas, and he's always wanting to learn more and change things. And happy to admit he made a mistake, and he's just the best people are like that. Actually, it's that obsession with. The biggest thing really is when you do it doesn't matter what you're doing so much. It's how you approach what you're doing. There's one question that I ask myself every day of my life, and I've done so many dumb things wrong. Like I'm giving the impression of that because it's true. But there's one question I ask myself every day of my life: how can I do this better? How can I improve on this? How can I give better service? How can I do this more effectively? All the time. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm digging potatoes at my farm, or if I'm emptying the dishwasher, I'm always wanting to know, how can I improve on what I'm doing? And there's never a day goes by. And that's what I say to anybody. If you want to be great at what you do. See, I started off as a failed academic, a mowing contractor, doing gardening. Yeah. But every day I'd ask myself the question, how can you improve on this? How can you do it better? I cannot understand people who work incredibly long hours and work so hard, and but they won't spend 5 minutes thinking, how can I improve what I do? How can I lift it? That is the characteristic that makes for success more than anything else in my experience.
Yeah, it's very uplifting to hear these characteristic traits that have got to where you want to be. And one thing I really resonate with you after looking into you a lot more, after seeing you on the media, is how serious you also take your health. And could you explain to the listeners a bit about your routine, your eating, and how serious you take it?
Well, yes, I exercise, very basic. I would do vigorous exercise at least half an hour a day, and often a lot more. I'll go for a brisk half-hour walk, or I'll work on my farm for a few hours, whatever, if I've got time. And also exercise should ideally, at least for that half hour, should at least double your pulse rate. That's the guideline. My resting pulse rate is about 55, 60, which is pretty good for someone of my age, but that's another test. Obviously weight, body mass index is a pretty good guide to that. I just keep my weight at, I'm a body mass index about anything between 18 and 25 is okay. I think I'm about 22, something of that nature. So I'm in the middle of that. So I watch my weight, weigh myself regularly. I love desserts and things and so forth, and pizza, but you just got to keep it under control. I refuse to let myself. Actually, one of the things I've discovered recently is 16-8 fasting. Basically means you try not to eat for 16 hours a day, so I don't eat breakfast. But you have to eat dinner because it's with the family. It's a big family occasion. Yes. So between like 7 o'clock and I'd even do 1 the next day, I don't eat. And that's, I find, a very good way of controlling weight, because towards lunchtime you do get a bit hungry, and I find it works. Whereas so a dessert I can have 2 helpings of pie because I haven't had any. I'll fast it off.
Yeah. I looked up that you weigh yourself every day.
Yeah, most days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let yourself. What you don't want to do is to find you've gained 5 kilos. You want to pick up on the first 1 kilo and then do something about it. Look, I don't find that easy. I addressed there was a talk at our conference centre about addiction, and they asked me to give a talk. So I went up and I said, look, I have to admit to you guys, it's my own addiction. It's Nutella. I have a really bad thing about Nutella. They buy some Nutella in my house, and I'll get the spoon and start digging into it, and before they know it's gone. So they actually hide it. They hide the Nutella to keep it away from me. They put it in something like the bread maker or something, which is pretty easy. It's easy to find out what they've done with it. But I am a real terrible on Nutella. It's just addictive. Oh, I cannot stop. I don't think it's not easy. These things aren't easy, but it's just that you've got to have a sense that you've got something in life worth living, and looking after your health it's a responsibility. I've got responsibility to my family, I've got responsibility to my franchisees, and I've got responsibility to the world through my research project, which could really change the world. I can't be so indulgent as to damage my health, because God's given me a task to do in life. You
look further ahead than the immediate gratification of having that snack or cheating, and you're looking down the line of there's a bigger purpose to why you're wanting to become the healthiest you can, why you're wanting to become the more successful you can. And that's really important for people in general when they make those split decisions. Think about down the line, how's that going to make you feel, or what's the cost of it?
Yeah, well, it's the thing they say, women say, a minute on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. It's kind of, you've got to think of it. But to me, it's kind of like a moral thing. Look, I'm naturally lazy. I'm naturally a glutton. It's not so much that I find it easy to work hard or to restrain myself. I just have a strong sense of obligation of conscience. That if I put on weight or if I don't exercise, I feel bad. I just beat myself up. I think, you lazy, greedy slob. Come on, you're pathetic. I mean, And same with working too. I don't always feel like doing what I should, but I have this kind of sense of obligation. So I'm always, it's always a bit of a battle, but every day is a fight. Every day is a fight to do better with yourself. It's never easier. And I don't want it to be easy. Yeah. I never want to stop fighting. When I stop fighting, I'm dead. Literally, I'll be dead.
Yeah. It's the struggle and the pressure you put yourself up under which makes you grow and develop. And it's really refreshing to hear, because everyone thinks that people that are successful, they've got it all sorted out. And you're telling us that you're lazy, you don't like doing this, you struggle, but you just keep going on and you have that end goal. And it's really refreshing and inspiring for people to hear that you don't have to be a certain mold to get to where you want to be.
People have wildly wrong ideas. They think you've got to be smart for a start, and that's rubbish. It has very little to do with it. They think you've got to have some degree and stuff. Look, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, look, the average income in Australia, the median income is only about $60-something thousand. Most of my franchisees do better than that, and some of them only completed high school. They just basically got sense about business. There is an incredible opportunities out there. The service industry is way, way, way underestimated as a potential for income. We've got a job in for a finance person paying $50,000 a year, and you get 100 applicants, half of them with degrees.
Yeah,
it's lunatic. There's more law students in Australia than there are lawyers. My son used to tell me that when he was a law student. He's now actually doing quite well as a lawyer because he's got great personal characteristics. Yeah. But the point of it is, people wildly overestimate things like money, degrees, intelligence, whereas what really counts, to my mind, is just effort, putting the effort in and caring about what you do enough to say, how can I do this better every day? How can I do this better? And just making the disciplined decision. It's not the big decisions, it's the little ones. Yeah. Do I get on the treadmill? Do I not take a snack between meals? Do I ring the person back? Do I follow up this complaint properly? I one of the systems I have actually, I use emails. I'm not much on social media. I use emails a lot. And I have a rigorous policy of sorting out emails. I start with the most recent ones, and I just go, deal with it, almost right to the end. And then I get on top of it. And I would get normally more than 100 emails a day, but I handle them. I get a phone call, I return it, I do it. Because when you respond to somebody, whether you respond within a week or an hour, it's the same time that you've taken, but the difference in the effect on the person you're responding to is massive.
Yeah.
Those kinds of disciplines. But if I didn't do that, I'd feel guilty. I'd let people down. Yeah. It's not so much that I'm naturally good at doing those things. I just sense that, the one story I love is the parable of the talents. I think to me that's the absolute core. The story where the man goes on. Yeah.
No, could you, for people that don't know the story, could you just do a quick...
Okay, it's something that Jesus told about. This is a rich man who goes on a journey, going on a long journey, and he has 3 servants. And he goes to them and he says, look, okay, here's some money for you. Here's the first guy, because he knows he's the most capable. Here's 5 talents. Now go and use that properly. Second guy, not quite so capable, 2 talents. Third guy, even less capable, 1 talent. A talent's a lot of money. So he goes away, comes back sometime later. And the first servant comes to him and says, okay, look, here's the 5 talents that you gave me. And I went out and I traded in the marketplace. Jesus was quite commercial in his thinking, actually. Interesting. And I found 5 talents more. I've doubled your money. And he says, well done. Fantastic. Second servant, 2 talents. Yes, I went out. He wasn't quite as capable, but he still went out, got 2 talents more. Well done. Congratulations. Come and welcome. Third servant comes to him and says, look, I knew you were a hard master. And I didn't want to do anything, so I just buried your talent in the ground, and here it is. It's yours. Back again. and the master says, "You wicked and slothful servant! You could at least have put the money in the bank and got me some interest. Now get out of here and take the 1 talent, give it to the man who has 5, because the point was it wasn't the fact that the guy with the 1 talent had less ability. It was the fact that he didn't use what he had.
Yeah.
And this is where our word talent comes from. And it's a wonderful story because it doesn't matter whether you're the 5 talent or the 2 talent or the 1 talent. Sometimes I think I'm the one talent man, really. But it's what you do with what you've got. You can't complain to God, or at least whatever your equivalent is if you're an atheist, about what you haven't got. Look at what you've got. And most people have got far more than they think.
Yeah.
I'm astonished at how much ability. We have one lady in our office, a lovely lady called Megan, and she's like a single mother in her 40s. And before she came to work for me, she had never in her whole life had anything more than a base job. She'd never had a raise. And put her in a position, she's actually, I gave her my first raise because she's doing some good work, and she was almost in tears. She was so grateful for it. She's now the manager of one of our departments. And she is a fantastic lady. She's got so much. She comes up with ideas to make things work. I just love Megan. She's fantastic. But she never had the opportunity. It just shows you the kind of abilities that are out there. People don't. Yeah. Which is one of the great things about having your own business, of course, is that you have the opportunity to do things. You don't have some boss telling me, hey, you're in this particular thing because you're a woman or you're too old or you haven't got a degree or whatever. In your own business, nobody's going to tell you that. It's your decision.
Yeah, correct. It's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, because everyone you come across, they have benefits, and you want to get it out of them and strive them to become the best they can. And what inspires me after watching a bit about you is, on my own journey, is that I love that you've been able to use your success to really make the world a better place, to strive it to become better. And not many may know of your mission to help people with mental illness and addiction through your research program. And can you please explain more about the program? Because when I was looking into it, I was like just amazed at how much money and how much effort you put in to research it.
Well, it's based on what I was doing, studying historical cycles and so forth. So, but what it's come down to, this concept, is that most of what happens in human society depends on character. The reason why societies are wealthy and others poor is because of the character of the people. It's not the politics and the economics reflect the character. Character is basic. And what I've come to realize, and I didn't notice when I was doing my PhD, but this character is based in epigenetics. And that's the way. It's not so much the way, I don't know if you know about genes, but genes actually, a gene functions by producing a protein. I mean, that's a very simple way. It just puts out this protein. Now, the point about it is, though, various kinds of things in the environment, and that could be in your own life, in the womb, in your parents' life, or even your grandparents' life, can actually change the settings on these genes. It can either switch the genes off or it can switch them on. It can do things to change the way they function. So even though the genes are the same, they work in a different way. So what we've come to realize is that most of the problems we have in society are because the genes are not working in an optimum fashion.
Okay.
So, for example, somebody we were talking before about this business of long-term versus short-term thinking. That's one of the key ideas. One of the things you notice if you looked at there's a wonderful book called Farewell to Arms, ALMS, which is by an economic historian, talks about the rise of the West. And it talks about how people changed over the centuries, up to the 19th century, and became much more long-term thinking. They invested more in education and so forth like that. And they had longer terms instead of investments, financial investments. Yeah. It's a wonderful book. So there's a change in character that happens. What matters so much to your success is, and so many other things in life, is whether you look to the immediate short-term gratification or the long-term, what you want to achieve in life. As Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. It's that long-term versus short-term. Now, what we've come to understand, and we've done experiments with rats for some years, is that this is actually something that you can control and you can change. So, for example, we make rats much better mothers or more hardworking, which is exploratory.
Yes.
The rat term's the equivalent, by changing the pheromones in their environment, for example. Yeah. So what we're doing is developing character change, and one of the most important, there's a couple of different kinds of it, but one of the most important elements of this is getting people to think more in a long-term way.
Okay. Which you feel will help with people's mental illness and addictions and well-being. Yes.
See, what happens when a person, and addiction and obesity are basically the same kind of problems. If somebody is saying, I want to do this right now, I'm not so concerned about what I'm going to feel like tomorrow or next week or what effect it'll have. These things are very short term. So if you can get a person to think long-term and think, okay, but what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of life do I want? What do I want from my family? What do I want from my social relationships? And that's more important to me than what I really feel like doing right now. Then you should actually, which should actually have a dramatic effect. We've seen this in rats already. We've seen some really, really big changes, and we're looking at all kinds of ways of doing this, things like microRNA and cytokines, proteins, even microbes, so, as well as pheromones. So we're looking at all different ways of doing this. But if we can change character, and we've already had some very good success with rats, then it ought to be a mind-blowing way to deal with these things. Now, I'm certainly confident of things like addiction and obesity and so forth. There are some suggestions these same kind of patterns could apply to mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, for example.
Okay. Is this like one of the reasons why you've been so vocal about our draconian lockdowns currently in Melbourne and how they're affecting lives in terms of the mental health and the lack of social interaction?
Yes, yeah, right. Look, we're very concerned about that at gyms. It sounds funny to say so, but there's nearly 4,000 people involved in gyms, but it's kind of like an extended family because every single franchisee has my phone number and email address. I don't give my phone number out freely to anybody else.
Yes.
But my franchisees have it, so I hear from them a lot. I'm in very close contact with them. So issues of mental illness really affect us very badly because when it happens, we've had suicides. And that's very hard to take. One of my franchisors and a couple of franchisees have committed suicide. So we're aware of this and we often talk about it. We had a dreadful case in Perth a couple of years back where one of our guys actually murdered his 3 little girls and his wife and then his mother-in-law. It was absolutely shocking. Nothing to do with the business, I might say, just personal demons that drove him. But I went over to talk to the people in Perth because they were really upset. And most of the franchisees in the whole city were there.
Yeah,
and it was a very emotional meeting. It was just about what this dreadful. And then I asked them, "What are your ideas? How can we deal with this stuff?" And they came up with a whole lot of things, which we do. One of them is that we send out a preach magnet to every franchisee, which gives the emergency numbers, including mental health numbers.
Yeah.
We have mental health training for our franchisors now as part of our system. But the other thing too, they came up with at the time, they said, we think there should be franchisee mentors. And I said, what do you mean? He said, people who don't charge, who just are there on a voluntary basis to help franchisees who've got issues that they've got no one to talk to, but someone who understands. And I asked them, well, who would be willing to volunteer for this? And you know what? Most of the people in that room put up their hand because they felt what had happened. So we do feel these things. We're very, very aware of it more than most people would be because of the kind of network we have. So when the lockdown happens, we knew immediately this was going to cause problems. And you know something about it too, and something people often ask me, are you proud of having, nearly 4,000 franchisees? And I said, no, I don't really think about it that way. The one thing that does make me really proud is the fact that my franchisors in general have the same care for franchisees as I do. And one of the things that I was really moved by it. Our franchisees, part of our role is that our franchisors ring franchisees regularly, ideally once a week, at least once a month, and just talk to them and keep in touch with them and see if they can help them and stuff. This contact thing, as well as regular meetings and stuff too. It's part of the system. Now, during the lockdown, obviously we didn't charge our franchisees any fees because they're not making any money. Even those who could do a little bit of work like NDIS and stuff, we didn't charge them because their income is terrible. But you know what? Our franchisors are still working as hard as ever, ringing, talking to their franchisees, emailing them, helping them out because they're that kind of person. And that makes me really, really proud.
Yeah.
We had a guy called Brian Duckett came out from the UK. He was in franchising for decades. And he came to one of our national conferences and he said, Jim's is unlike any franchise system I've ever come across because your people really, really care about their franchisees.
Yeah. And the reputation that you have it speaks for itself. I've grown up with the Jim's brand and it's always had that reputation of, geez, they're good. There's never a bad word you hear about that company, and credit to you and credit to your system.
The bad things that happen, we still have them, but I work on it every day. We're actually got some great things going through. We're developing some software, thing called Jim's Jobs. And one of the things that'll do is it'll dramatically reduce the number of complaints. It'll allow jobs to be booked in automatically. It'll remind franchisees when they haven't turned up to a job or forgotten about a client to make it easy, all kinds of things. So we're constantly looking at ways to improve what we do. So, and we'll never get better, but I would hope that in the next couple of years, we'll see the number of complaints that we've currently got halved. So they do pretty well overall, but we can certainly do better.
And I love that attitude of you're always striving to be better, because I read that your customer complaints it's not high. There's a percentage, it's low, I think, and you're still like, no, it's not good enough. We need to do better. We can do better. And that is inspiring for people, that they should always be striving to reach new heights, break boundaries, and push through. And I love that. And I'm conscious of your time, and I really appreciate how much value you've given. And I've got one final question, and it's, what do you think is the secret to happiness in life?
There's various things. I'm talking from personal experience and also from a lot of reading on this subject. Having a sense of purpose, to me, is and from all the studies show, is incredibly important. You've got to have something to live for beyond yourself. If all you've got is your own personal indulgence, ease, pleasure, you don't tend to be a very happy person. So believing in something beyond yourself is massively important. With money, it's interesting. Money has interesting patterns. People with more money, on average, tend to be a little bit happier, but it's not much after you reach about $75,000 a year. What matters even more is what you spend it on. The worst way to spend money is on display, like the fancy cars and stuff. This is scientific research.
Yeah.
Next is experiences. But you know what the number one best way to do with money to make yourself happy? Give it away. But give it away to something that you believe in, that you're involved in. That is number one, which is what I do, of course, with mine.
Yeah, with your research.
And then there's family, there's relationships. In my case, particularly my wife and my children, work colleagues and so forth too, but relationships as well. And also health, particularly exercise. Yeah. There's a huge, if you could bottle the benefits of exercise and put it in a pill, it'd be worth billions and billions and billions of dollars, because it is an incredibly great mood enhancer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thank you for your time, Juice. It was incredible. Got a lot out of it. If you'd like to find out
more about my research and what's behind it, my website, biohistory.org, is really worth having. There's some nice little videos on there that explains how it works.
At biohistory.org.
Biohistory.org, yeah.
And also for anyone, there's a video that I watched. It was a day in the life of Jim Penman, the CEO, and that's a really cool insight into your life and your routine. It was really insightful.
You can get that off our website, www.gyms.net.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.